I think in this era that we're in, like particularly with MCP and the chat box being able to do anything, to your point, Chris, like I think sometimes we forget that that's still really daunting.
In some ways, when you're dealing with something which is ambiguous, it crosses a bunch of lines, it's somewhat better in my mind to just be like, here's what you can do. Isn't this fucking amazing? Like, isn't this cool? And if you are genuinely excited about what it's going to do, that will resonate with people.
AI has made a lot of us rethink how we work. But one of the biggest shifts we've been talking about inside Wistia isn't actually a new AI model. It's something called an MCP. I know, another acronym, but the more we've built with MCPs, the more we've realized what becomes possible when AI can actually work with your company's tools and content. So today we're doing something a little different. Instead of bringing on an outside guest, I wanted to sit down with two of the people who have been closest to this work. Sasha Friedman, one of our PMMs, and Sam Balter from the content team. Oh my gosh. Well, look, here we are. Look at us. We're doing it.
Yeah.
We're in a grid.
We're in the grid. Inside the grid.
We're inside the computer.
Yeah. Tron, legacy, anyone? We love it. Okay. We're here to talk about MCPs. So we're going to, of course, talk about the Wistia MCP and stuff you can do with that. But I think we should just start with a question for people who may be hearing MCP a lot, may not know what is an MCP. So what is an MCP?
Well, an MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. And that's really just a fancy way of saying that if you want to be able to access some software, some tool via your agent of choice, so like Claude, ChatGPT, Cursor, you need a way to connect those two things. And basically what happens is if you open up, let's say, Claude, and you're typing in the same place you would go to say, like, tell me the top 20 restaurants in this city, you can go in similarly and say, tell me the top videos in my Wistia account. And the MCP is just a way that it's bringing together the interface that you're in with the tools that you're trying to access and makes it super easy. So you can use natural language prompts, ask questions, you can take actions. It's really kind of like revolutionizing the space, I think, in a way that I, as a less technical person, had really underestimated. I heard the words for a long time and I was like, yeah, that's like this thing over here. I probably need to have some crazy like coding or technical skills to make the most of it. And you really don't. Like, if you know how to Google, then you know how to use an MCP.
And one of the interesting things I think we're seeing already with having an MCP and basically enabling people to allow agents to use our APIs, understand how to use the products, I think is like the different types of things, right, that we're already seeing customers do with the MCP versus like the API.
I've been calling this our first like crossover product. I feel like 90s vibe of like crossover artists, where it's for technical and non-technical people. Because it's making it easier for folks who have been using our APIs, who do code, and are using, like a Claude Code or Cursor, and they are now like all of their work is consolidating into one sort of platform, one place to operate out of. And now they can use Wistia in that same way. So it's not just like for the non-coding masses like myself.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the least technical of the bunch here. So
you are.
Slow it down for yes, you. Yes, you sweet dummy. Was there a workflow that was like that really helped it click for you? Because I think what I understand is the utility of being able to like go into Claude or ChatGPT and access my Wistia library, right? Like that seems helpful. Yeah. But what is something that you mentioned, Sasha, like organizing a channel with like a single prompt? Can you just like break that down more? And then Sam, maybe if you like had a workflow that really made it click, I'd love to hear about that.
I think in marketing stuff, you're often like, sometimes you have a very clear idea what you want to do, and sometimes you're just discovering as you get more information. So it was like, first just being like, how well are my videos performing? Like, tell me the top engaging videos from this folder and getting that breakdown, seeing those top engaging videos and be like, oh, I should put these in one place that people can access, because before they're living in like, this page here, this email here. And like people are watching them. So, and they're related to each other. I should put them together, and being able to just from that seamless flow of seeing the top engaging, saying like, will you tag these videos as like top engage, and then also put them in a channel, name it this. And then I can go back and see the performance of that channel, and all of that's happening in one flow. And the other one I just want to call out of like how transformative this has been is like, even for our own website, I want to say like 7 months ago, we were auditing all of our videos to figure out the top languages people were watching them in. And that process of auditing your content is like pretty time consuming. And then having to go through and figure out ordering translations and captions. We made it work, but then with this, and this is something we've seen our customers do, like auditing is one of the biggest things that they're doing, where they're saying like, tell me my videos that don't have captions, tell me my videos that are showing up in these other languages, and then order translations for me or order captions. And that's a thing that takes like minutes instead of, a painful spreadsheet or hours of back and forth.
Yeah, I think for me, like the things that made it click, or like, at first I didn't really think there would be a ton of use of the MCP. I like didn't quite get it until I started actually using it. And I think when I use like Claude or things like that, I'm really just mostly trying to reduce the amount of clicks I make in a day. Like, how much am I clicking? Less clicks. And then there's also this other thing of like, I'm often, and marketers do this, it's like I'm often just dividing two numbers like all the time, where it's like, how did this perform versus last month's webinar?
So
okay,
arduous,
this divided by this,
yeah.
added into an update. And so it's like, okay, this is part of the job and it's fine, but there's no real point to doing a lot of this stuff manually. And so it's like a webinar ended. We had this webinar with HubSpot and it ended. And I was like, how does this perform relative to the last 5 webinars? Great. That would have been like 6 clicks. That would have been like entering all those numbers into a calculator and then writing, this is the benchmark. And so at first I was like, sick, I get this nice recap. And then it like stepped up further, where I was like, oh, I should make this for an upcoming webinar. So I have a little thing in Claude where I have like a daily brief, and it goes and it reads my emails. And so then I went and I said, hey, use the Wistia MCP and update me on the registration for these 3 upcoming webinars each day. Boom, just integrates into my daily brief. And I'm like, oh, this is so much less logging in. This part is really nice. But then it like started getting like a step further and further for me, where it's like a webinar ended and I was like, oh, I don't just want the recap of stats. Like, I actually also want all of the clips. And normally I would have to type into Remix, like, make me this clip, make me this clip, make me this clip. And instead I just have one prompt that's like, make me 6 clips. I want 3 of them horizontal. I want 3 of them vertical. And then I want it to all generate on a nice looking page, like an HTML page. Boom, does that. And I'm like, oh, great. This is like way easier to review. And then I like went a step further and it was like, can Remix also give me the blog post? And then can you also in the blog post embed clips of that webinar into the blog post? Boom, does it, puts it on the page, adds a nice little like gated like form for the actual on-demand version of the webinar, all afterwards. So now it's like something, it's like, none of this is new capabilities. It's just a lot faster than it was. And it's also a lot nicer looking. And it just sort of fits into like how I'm using these tools today.
Yeah. And every one of those things before would have had to have been like a conscious page that we would have had to have built, or workflow, or that you would have had to have built with our API. And like, it would be like, well, is this worth it to build this app just to like try to save this time? I was like, no. And I do think it's interesting because like so much of this is how it's allowing us to explore products in completely different ways, basically. Mm-hmm. And then like, we're going to find places where we get, I think, a lot more value than we could have realized previously. But it's like, if you don't have an MCP and the MCP your API doesn't access all the different functionality that you have in a product, you miss out on this. So it's been important to build it and update it and have it in place. And then, but it is an interesting, like, even marketing challenge, I would say. I don't know if you guys want to get into that at all. But like, how do you talk about a thing that can do everything?
Totally. Yeah, I was just going to say, like, as like the product marketer on this, like, we're trying to get folks to use it and give it, see how they're working with it, like what bugs they're finding, all that stuff, and like different use cases. And I feel like Sam is one of those people, like each time he's interacting with it, there's something new and bigger and bigger and bigger that he's doing with it. And you can see it building on top of itself in a way that, like, it's so reflective of what, like, his role as a content marketer. Like, I came to it and I was like, okay, I'm optimizing for like who's engaging with the video, what the flow is. And that was sort of where my focus was, because it's related to my day to day. And then hearing how Sam's doing it, it's opening up, like, he's able to extend the bounds of where it can go. And to your point, Chris, it's like, where before with our API, it's so costly of like pushing the bounds of something with each new thing. And that cost isn't there in the same way. So you have sort of the like freedom to explore. And I think thinking about how to market it, it's actually more exciting for me, because it brings me back to what people's jobs are, like their tasks that they're trying to do. I think with so many products in general that you try to market, you're sometimes trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole and make it work, where you're like, this thing that's kind of related to the work you want to do, here's this roundabout way you can get to it, and hope, in the end you'll get the result you want, but it's kind of convoluted. Whereas the MCP, because like one of the great things about Wistia's API over 20 years is it's so flexible, it's so powerful, but it's been hard to access. And so now that flexibility is delivered to you, and it allows us to speak very clearly to, like, hey, as a content marketer, like, don't you want to be able to track your webinar registrations, be able to report on how things performed, develop other content outside of it? If you're doing like demand gen, you want to make sure that all of your lead forms are optimized on the site, and you've got everything in the language you want and captions set up so that everybody can access it. And it actually feels like it's bringing back sort of marketing basics of talking to people in the jobs that they're doing.
I struggle with it, to have a product that can do so many things. And it's not particularly visual, which is like a hard part about it. It's just not, you're talking about something that's like in Claude and it's generating text and other stuff like that. But I think, like, for me, marketers wear a ton of different hats and do a ton of different jobs. Sometimes, like, webinars are run by content. Sometimes they're run by demand gen. Sometimes it's a team of 1. Sometimes it's a team of 20. And I think when it gets to that kind of stuff, especially of like somebody who has all these different areas they could be involved in, like, you just have to show them what the thing can actually do. Like, you don't need to, like, you could say MCP is model context protocol, and I've gained zero information about what that means. Like, what can I do? Okay, I can type something and change the language of it. Great, that's cool. Now I can see that. I can see how many videos on my website. So it's like, I think sometimes we have a really strong desire to talk to people by leading with the problem that they have and say, this is your problem and this is how this thing fixes it. In some ways, when you're dealing with something which is ambiguous, it crosses a bunch of lines, it's somewhat better in my mind to just be like, here is what you can do. Isn't this fucking amazing? Like, isn't this cool? And if you are genuinely excited about what it's going to do, that will resonate with people. And it's like, I think that there's a degree of like, it is really hard when you're talking about like something so big. You just want to show really small, defined, clear use cases. And I think you don't want to show them necessarily as like, the way a lot of AI stuff is written, which is like, prompt this and change your life. It's like, show me the thing it generates, like, show me what is actually good about this and why I want it. Don't even tell me about all the end results. Like, just show it doing a thing that's impressive and people will be happy. And I think that's where I feel with the MCP is like, we just have to show how much stuff you can do. and make it really tangible, and the right people will figure it out. Like, it will get to the right people.
If you are building a product like this, that's like MCP is a layer across everything, as exactly as you're talking about, like just telling doesn't really work. You need to show. But there's some people who are going to like poke and prod and find things that would be possible now that weren't possible before. And there's other people I think who need it to be like handed to them as like, hey, this is the way. Do you think that's a big thing to worry about? Is that something that's entered your mind as we think about this product in general? But just like, I'm really talking about for the market here, not just Wistia, right? Like, how do you think about that?
For me, I feel like, I think Sasha probably has other opinions as well, but it's like, I think for me, it's like there are people who are just going to be early adopters and going to use the thing no matter what. So what you need to enable for them is to create something that's better visually, that they can share with other people, that will encourage other people in the company to use it. So like a very small example is like the webinar recap I talked about. Instead of it just being a long Slack message, make it into something like a little page. And then people internally are going to go, ooh, how do we like get that? How do we make that?
Wow.
So exactly, like real dazzle. And
Oohs
so
and ahs, oohs and ahs.
lots of oohs and ahs. And so like the thing that I'm really concerned about from the like early adopter group to the more majority is building skills. And I think the more that you build out predefined skills for people that let them produce stuff really easily without having to do much work, they're going to become more familiar with the product and tweak those skills. So like for me, like my registration skill is like, track registration. The way it works is it tracks registration, gives me a weekly update until 1 week before the event, and then it gives me daily updates on registration. That might not work for somebody else, but that gives them the skill as a starting point, and they can edit from there. So I think like the MCP is this huge powerhouse. What's going to make MCPs more useful for the majority is going to be building libraries of skills that are really useful, easily accessible, and are things that like create stuff that looks nice. And I think the more we like enable people at Wistia to download or build or produce skills that use our MCP, like the better off we'll be.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I think in this era that we're in, like particularly with MCP and the chat box being able to do anything, to your point, Chris, like I think sometimes we forget that that's still really daunting. That's giving people a blank page and not having any sort of guardrails or guidelines or us prompting what you can prompt is not helpful, because that is still just like so much effort to figure out what you're going to do. And I think about giving people more guidance on how far you can stretch the bounds actually helps push them closer to those edges and explore beyond it, as opposed to saying like, do whatever. You're going to stay pretty close to what feels comfortable and normal for you. And I think with folks who are the early adopters, that we love having them be able to sort of poke and prod. Like that's something we're doing internally in saying, I tried to do this thing, it didn't work, and helping us really smooth out those flows. Because with people who are adopting as they go on, the biggest thing is having that trust. I think that's why we see so many people start, and myself included, when you're starting with a new tool, you're like, I just want you to tell me information. I don't want you to do anything, because I don't trust yet that I know that you can do this well. And it's continuously building that and seeing like, you're giving me the correct information, you're doing it in the right way. And then I'm going to sort of baby step into, okay, you can order captions, or you can do this small, you can add a tag. I'm going to check you can do that. And then I'll give you more and more trust as we go. But that I think is top of mind for me, is just like how we continue to like establish trust so that you do feel like it's something you can rely on for taking those bigger actions.
One thing I've been thinking about with all of this too is like, as you have the MCPs allowing people to have much more of an impact on the thing in their account, right? Like whether it's like building more channels, or they're deciding that they're going to run more webinars, or they're going to track the registrations in another way. And they're doing that in a different interface. So then like the quality of the interface is like an interesting question. Like, do you think the quality of these interfaces of Wistia, but just like web apps in general, do you think that like the quality is going to have to go up? So because expectations are like, well, when I get in there, I need to understand what I'm doing, or do you think it'll matter less? What do you think?
I think it'll matter a lot more. I went to a conference last month, and I really appreciated one of the talks. They were talking about platform proximity and the way that maybe you build your slides initially in Claude and then you export them to Google Slides. You're going to do that last bit of touch up in Google Slides, you're not going to go back to Claude to fix like the text on a slide or whatever. So how do you have that seamless experience when you come back into the platform? You want tools that are closest to like the platform you're working in. And I think similar for Wistia. And something else that came up in this talk was the idea that, right now, I think we're leaning a lot of SaaS products are leaning heavily on a chat box to really unleash a lot of the friction that you've seen before in UI, but it can also be really informative for what UI you need to build. Atlassian had their Rovo, and they saw that people were, doing a brainstorm, making lots of Post-it notes, and then wanting to take those Post-it notes and turn them into Jira tickets. Prompting Rovo to do that is actually like kind of a pain in the ass. But they saw people were trying to do that, and that prompted them to put in UI where you could just like select all of them and click a button to send it to Jira tickets. And so I think it's going to elevate the way we think about UI differently, because we'll get better insight into what people are trying to do and understand what's the right path for. Like sometimes chat is going to be the best way to do it. Sometimes it's going to be a UI component, and hopefully that will elevate and remove a lot of the friction from those experiences that we've seen before.
I feel like I think about SEMrush. SEMrush is probably one of the first MCPs I started like using, because the platform, SEMrush, is ugly. Like it is very ugly, and there is an enormous amount of data in there. It is like so much. And what I generally want to know is like, I updated an article, is it doing better? And to get that answer in SEMrush is kind of a pain in the ass. Like there's a lot of clicks, a lot of navigating. But when I do log into SEMrush, I am being informed about what I should look at. It's showing me AI visibility. It's surfacing things that I might not know that the product could do or give me. And I think like that is the value, is like a lot of those rote tasks that you do over and over again when you log in are better served through MCPs and through Claude. But like the software has a responsibility to like easily understand the scope of everything you could do with it. And I think about that as like our analytics, how we think about analytics, how we like, people might not know about like focused attendee rate, which is something that during webinars, it shows you who's clicked on your webinar is actually watching it versus clicked onto another screen. That's something I find like enormously valuable. And if I was only using Wistia's MCP and I never knew that stat existed, I wouldn't be able to like draw on it for information. So I definitely think that like the interfaces have to be simple, and they have to be in a way where it's like conveys all of the things you can do. And then anything that's a rote repetitive task is probably better served through like Claude or an MCP.
What's the thing that you think like every marketing team is going to be doing in the next, let's say, 6 months with MCPs? Like, is there one thing that you're like, here's your starter task, here's your starter kit?
I think people are probably just going to be churning out tons of clips. Like the ability to just max out making clips with the MCP is really straightforward. Go to all these webinars, make clips, go to all these things, make clips. And that's what a lot of people are talking about. They're just talking about clips and more clips and creating clips. So like people are going to do that because it's something that's like in discussion. I think what Sasha flagged earlier about auditing is more important and will be a bigger thing later. Because like an example audit that I ran for Wistia is I had Claude use our Google Analytics and look at all of our blog posts that had a high bounce rate and relatively low time on page. And then I was like, show me the ones without a video. And then go into Wistia and then find a video that matches the topic of this blog post and then suggest one for it. And it's like, great, because we know videos generally are going to increase time on page. Videos are going to lower bounce rate. So now all of a sudden it's like, it gives me this much more detailed thing to do. Oh, great. Now I know which blog posts are going to benefit from videos. I know which videos I might need to edit or put on those blog posts. Awesome opportunity. So I think like a lot of people have struggled to figure out like where video fits into all the different parts of their website. I think people are going to make a ton of clips first, and then they're really going to ramp up the auditing side of it and start looking at like video data plus CRM data, video data plus website data, video data plus like call transcript data. You know, like, does these videos match the way my customers talk about their products or their problems? So I think like the world of auditing is going to be like really big, but it's going to kind of require people to maybe cook one or two systems and think about how stuff all fits together.
Yeah, it feels like it totally changes what your video library is. Like, it's no longer just something where videos are stored. Like, it becomes a place where like you can actually improve content or like inform strategy. It just feels way more active, I guess, than how I typically think of a video library, which is like you post it and then you kind of more or less forget it. Right. Like,
I think in general, like your data becomes more valuable in this world because there's all these like long tail things that might have made sense as a risk to take, but like the question would have always been the time involved in them. Mm-hmm. And so like, when is the juice worth the squeeze? Right. So like, and I think in this case, it's like, well, it's so much easier to do these things and potentially do them well. It's effectively like, in a way, you're like hiring someone to go through your account and look at the performance of everything. And then look at everything in Google Analytics and come back with a pitch that says, hey, we know all these best practices. Like, should we actually put them into place or not? Like, the thing that was stopping us was literally time in the day. Mm-hmm. And now, like, because a lot of it's, I think, these rote tasks, you can actually accomplish them by automating a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think it allows to Sylvie's point and to your point, Chris, of like there's been such rich data in your account the whole time and it's coming out. And I know for me, it's been like the number of times I've had on my to-do list, you know, diving into the performance of our videos or like finding which videos we need to put a CTA or adjust where it is or add a form. And it just like always falls to the bottom because it just, there's not enough time to actually make that possible. And now it's something where I can do those deep dives of like, show me all the videos where somebody watch it, where people are watching all the way through. Let me put a lead capture form in there. Show me videos where people drop off in the first 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to drop a CTA within that, or I'm going to change the video and try a remix of it. It just, as like a data nerd, it's super exciting to have all of that more readily accessible in a way that was always like on a wish list before.
It's making me think of like, there was a time when we were going through the performance of individual videos and we had this like shooting a video with an iPhone. And it was a video on our blog explaining like how to shoot a video with an iPhone. But there's a lot of people rewatching one section, which was like, when there was like a quick shot of the actual settings on your iPhone, because there's a lot of settings on your iPhone for how you shoot video. This was like our suggested settings. And everyone was rewatching it. And we're like, oh, we should make a video just about that. So we made a video just about that. And then that, it turns out, was very interesting and got indexed and showed up and got so much traffic. And it was like something that happened because a person happened to think in that one moment, like, let me look at those moments of people rewatching. And we've known for a very long time that that's basically an implicit understanding that you're getting. But like you'd literally have to go page by page by page because it would be lost in the data otherwise. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. You have to think to ask the right questions. That's what I keep thinking about. It's like you have to open your mind as to like what's possible and what types of, how can I combine different data than I could have before to try to get an insight? And you might not always get one. But if you do, you can actually act on it and it's possible to get. And I think that's just very personally, I find it very fun because also you can like prove things out so much more quickly than you could have before.
It makes me think about the like communal aspect of a lot of this. Like at Wistia, we have our own sort of internal agent, and we're encouraged to work in open Slack channels. And I think I'm often a little bit self-conscious of like, I'm trying to figure out how it's going to operate. I'm going to ask some really weird questions to get to the answer I need. But it is super helpful because then you have people coming in of either like, oh, did you think about connecting this data source? Or like, I have this available. I ran a similar search last week and this was what was helpful. Or you can model off of like the number of times I've seen somebody with like a really, really solid prompt that then I'm able to be like, oh, I didn't even think to ask to have it done this way or to include this consideration or to give a word limit or whatever. So it is like, I think we often talk about video as a team sport, and it's a little bit like hand wavy in how that looks. But I do think it's bringing that to light more because you can really share cool ideas with each other about how you're making things, how you're getting information, and kind of bringing your library to life in a different way.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a full episode on the Wizard at some point.
I was just gonna say, it feels like we need to talk about the Wizard, but yeah, that might be a whole other episode. Briefly, Sam, tell us what the Wizard is.
So like if you're familiar with like Claude Tag that came out recently or something like that, basically it's like bringing an AI agent into Slack. And so Wistia has our own agent called the Wizard, and it's connected to everything. So it's connected to our Google Analytics. It's connected to all of our performance data. It's connected to our product data. It has all of these capabilities. And we just rolled it out as this sort of small hackathon experiment. It's now grown to like over 85% of the company uses it. It's got like 100% adoption across like leadership, sales, marketing, customer support, all these different groups. Its ranges of skills are everything from like get me the logo in this size to like run cohort analysis on different user groups. It's hard to describe everything they could do because it's just basically what we were normally doing with like 10 plus tools is all done through the Wizard. So now it's like, and one thing we were talking about with the MCP for Wistia is like, oh, the fun thing about like team sports things is like everybody could get the data on videos. One thing I learned about that is it also shines a lot of light on things that are not working well because other people in your company can now notice it. So like SEMrush, all of a sudden like SEMrush gets connected and then I get all these questions. Why aren't we ranking for this term? Why aren't we ranking for this term? Because none of these people were logging into SEMrush before, but now when it's so easy, they're like, why isn't it like this? I pulled a report today with the Wistia MCP that was like, out of all the videos within our navigation, so top nav videos on our product pages, what are the dubs? How many languages are they in and how much it is? There's a lot that are dubbed in multiple languages. Now I could go poke that. That wouldn't be something I would bring up normally. I might have to go look around some more. But now I'm like, oh, look what the Wizard says, or look what Claude showed me. Like, this is a problem. We should fix this, right? And so like, I think that one of the things that's very funny about these MCPs is like, it does really empower everybody with access to data, which is good. But it's very disorienting at first because now all of a sudden, something that you were all safe and cozy, being the person who knew how to log into HubSpot and look at data, that is not the case anymore. Anyone can jump in there and get any piece of information they want.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we're all smiling as you say that because we've all experienced this, I think. And well, we've done it. I mean, I've done it to many, many people, obviously. But I think it is really interesting because what I keep thinking is, and I think this is the value of just connecting all these tools together in the first place, like democratizing access, is actually there's like a culturally different way of working. And that different way of working is, you have to work out in the open, which is like a little uncomfortable at first. And not completely in the open. Doesn't have to be all in the open, but much more in the open. But then what ends up happening is like you dig in on something and you tag the person who's the expert. You say, hey, come in here and tell me, is this correct? Am I saying this wrong? They do that. And then you get somebody else into it. Scheduling a meeting with these 6 people over this potentially maybe issue that doesn't exist would never have happened before. they all dig in at different times, asynchronously. Oh, it turns out it is an issue. Oh, it turns out there is a solution. And then we cook up the solution in the same thread. And that, to me, is like a completely different thing, because when it wasn't shared context, we'd all be on our own doing this stuff. And then you just work the same way you normally do. It's like, go to your manager, go to this meeting, convince people with something, write up this big pitch. Hopefully they pay attention. Versus in this way, everyone's being brought along as it's happening. And so there was no meeting and the decision was made. And that to me is like, we're just kind of starting to scratch the surface there. But I do think that it does come back to these cultural challenges of like, what do you do when everyone can do everything? How do you divide up ownership? How do you make decisions? When should there be a meeting? When should there not? It's very interesting. And I'm thankful that everyone has embraced this so much and is being down to try it, right? Like it's, we wouldn't be moving nearly as fast as we are if that wasn't happening.
Yeah. I think to your point, Chris, like a lot of it is the deference to the expertise that people come with. So I found that we've been able to be even more collaborative and cross-functional in different ways. That, like, thinking about, I was in a chat with our engineers about what skills we could add to the MCP, and was able to bring Sam into that to talk about how he's, like, his expertise as a content marketer and what he's looking for. And then the engineers building it, talking about like what is possible to build in the product. And I don't know that connection would have happened in another situation. Totally. But it's like so cool.
I thought you were going to talk about the meeting you and I were in earlier today. Like another good example of this, of like something starting with like a small group of people getting handed to another group all out in the open, and then making progress in the open. And then the meeting was actually quite short to make some decisions that I think would have been pretty big in our old world. It was like, well, sounds good, moving forward.
I feel like it teams, like even like very collaborative companies, I feel like teams can get siloed so often. And this is like, just by existing, you're kind of like, wait, what do you need to do again? Why do you need to do it? It like forces that conversation so much more in a really refreshing way. So
it's funny to bring it back to the MCPs. Like the MCPs all get connected to each other, like in Claude or in your own agent or whatever. And then you have the problem of like it's all there, which is awesome and challenging because you're going to be dealing with stuff that you are not an expert in. And then it's like, how do you bring that back to others? And figuring that out is the key, because that's where you start to get the big productivity leaps, right? Like if you're still stuck by yourself using the same tools you had before, you're going to go faster, but it's not going to be nearly, if you're in any company with anybody else, then if you can actually collaborate with the people around you much more rapidly, which is really what we're saying, like that's where the value seems to be. There'll be cultural change, but on the other side of it, I think is like going much faster, tackling problems you couldn't tackle otherwise.
It did turn out that it was prompt and change lives, Sam.
Prompt and change lives. Prompt this. Build a $20 bazillion business. No mistakes.
No mistakes.
Never click again in your life.
Never click again.
Holy. I don't touch the keyboard anymore.
Yeah, things only just click in your mind now.
Wow. If that's not a closing line, I don't know what is.
Okay, well, what should we expect coming soon?
Look for even more capabilities. So I think, to Sam's point of things being out in the open, because people are looking at the API, we're building more and more that you can do in it, which means that people who are using our API directly, if you're doing it through the MCP, you'll be able to do even more than before. Look for new ways to access the API. So think about lots of different, I think one of the cool things that's happening now is there's so many different interfaces, and the opportunity for you to basically work where you feel most comfortable, and then just bring in, like, you're basically just calling in the tools that you would use regularly without having to leave that sort of like home base that you're working from. So keep an eye out for that. And maybe some really cool skills brought to you by Sam.
Yeah, look out for random experiments and skills with the MCP. Like, I'll definitely be making ones for content, for people who are hosting webinars, for people who have lots of videos and libraries and things like that, people who want to work on changing videos and using them to be the basis for blog posts or customer stories. Like, I'm just going to be trying to build and refine a lot of those skills over the next few months, and just hope to be sharing them with people as they start coming out.
Well, look, thank you both. Where can people connect with you? Can they connect with you? Will you let the people connect?
Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Sam Balter. Hi.
Yeah, also on LinkedIn, I'm Sasha Friedman, and IE looks like Friedman. So yeah.
Perfect.
Friedman.
Come say hello. Yes.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.